Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. In today's special DPS Showdown, we have my second or third ever Constellation 0 feature 5-star character, Yelan, and she's going to go against her 4-star doppelganger, Xingqiu. Now you might be wondering, what's the point of comparing the exact same character with the exact same character with the exact same character? Well, I've got no good response for that. Maybe for entertainment purposes, but before we get started, someone that has made my content creation journey an amazing ride just turned 3 years old. Aww. That's right, it's Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends has more champion combinations than I have Primo Gems spent on my Genshin account. That's an insane amount. Just scan the QR code down below or smash that link in the description. Let's talk about the pinnacle of PvE mobile gaming, the Doom Tower. This huge 120-floor tower is actually a giant prison. Way back in the day, the Arbiter fought off a bunch of baddies and somehow corralled them into this giant tower. Maybe she threw a pizza party in there to lure them in. Unfortunately, C0 is trying to end that pizza party, so you and your over 9,000 combination of champions can go in there and give them more pizza. One of my favorite things about Raid is how generous they are with the amount of summons you get. Just by playing the game, you can summon multiple times every single day. And this month in Raid, there's a summer solstice event called the Path of Light. As always, there's new champions and even new skins for Trunda Gilt Mallet. But that's not all. Hitting the link in the description below will get you the free champion Tayrel, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. You'll find these rewards in your inbox for the next 30 days only. But the main event is a special Deliana Chase event, where you get Deliana just from logging in for 7 days between now and July 28th. Deliana is a legendary high elf and one of the best supports in the entire game. For new players, just enter promo code MyDeliana to get 50 XP boosts and a ton of silver to level your free Deliana to max level 50 instantly. Huge thanks to Raid for sponsoring today's video. Anyway, in today's video, we'll be seeing how a Constellation 0 Yelan with a free-to-play weapon, the Slingshot, compares to a cheap chibi gender-bent Yelan and an expensive chibi gender-bent Yelan. Why are there two chibi gender-bent Yelans? Well, the first one is using the overwhelmingly voted for free-to-play relatable Sacrificial sword, and the second chibi gender-bent Yelan demonstrates the practical but expensive limit for his solo damage output. It is Xingqiu with a Refinement 5 Jade Cutter. The idea of this is to see how a damage-focused free-to-play Yelan with the Slingshot compares to a free-to-play accessible support Xingqiu build, and also the pinnacle of DPS Xingqius in this DPS Showdown. Now, as for their damage potentials, my Yelan is by far the lowest at 73.78%, while her crit ratio is superb. Sadly, she is missing a lot of HP percent rolls. Honestly, I considered triple crowning her just for this video to raise her damage potential to be more in line with the Xingqius, but I figured that would upset some Xingqiu mains, so I left her at the lowest damage potential for this video. Next, we have Support Xingqiu, who is using a Refinement 5 Sacrificial sword, and he is at Constellation 6. To compensate for him not needing a battery like the other two contestants, I've replaced the potential battery on his team with a second Pyro character, thus giving him Pyro Resonance. And with Pyro Resonance, this pushes his damage potential from an already great 81% to an absolutely stellar 89.7%, or I guess just 90%. And while the previous two builds for Yelan and Xingqiu were much more free-to-play relatable, this next one certainly isn't, because we are slapping on the very expensive Refinement 5 Jade Cutter. This is essentially the practical, achievable damage ceiling for a solo Xingqiu with minimal team support. His artifacts put him at a very respectable 81.3% damage potential. Since like Yelan, he needs a battery to function properly with the Jade Cutter, he is not using any beneficial resonances and instead is running with a Favonius Codex wielding Mona to help battery him up. But before we get started, we absolutely cannot skip everyone's favorite parts of the video, the disclaimers. All the runs in this video can be improved. I simply do each of these runs a few times and pick the best time for each of these situations. I'm not here to grind infinitely just to save a few frames to a few seconds. Each of these runs were done to the best of my abilities and problem solving within a reasonable amount of time. This is simply an anecdotal comparison between these characters at my levels of investment. This is not an accurate reflection of their power levels at all levels of investment. Just because character A is better than character B in a specific scenario does not mean that character A is better than character B. Please take everything with a giant grain of salt. And with all our contestants ready to jump into the pool, let's finally get started with the first showdown, the completely off-field damage showdown. These characters are known for their off-field damage output, so let's see how they do. The three of them were actually fairly close when it came to an entirely off-field scenario. Yelan does funnily buff Zhongli's damage a bit, but obviously Zhongli is barely doing anything given his build. What's truly remarkable about this is that Yelan completed this in exactly 10 seconds without a single extra frame to spare. And also being in second place between a 90% damage potential Sacrificial Xingqiu and an 81% damage potential Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu. As for Sacrificial Sword Xingqiu, again, he's at a very high damage potential because unlike the other two contestants, he doesn't need a battery, so I gave him Pyresonance. Anyway, Sacrificial Xingqiu was the slowest by a couple of seconds at 12.7 seconds, but given the fact that he is completely self-battering, this is a fairly admirable showing. And last we have the Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu. Unsurprisingly, he managed to squeak out a small victory here. Surprisingly though, the victory was quite small, netting him a 9.2 second clear time, which was only 0.8 seconds faster than a Constellation C0 Yelan with a slingshot. So despite the nearly $1,000 weapon on Xingqiu, if you're unlucky of course, this was a pretty small victory for him. The next showcase is an on-field with pre-casting versus the Regis-Fine again. This one focuses on their entire kit's damage outputs. This was quite impressive. Because Yelan is able to precast her burst, this allows her to gain a significant amount of bonus damage from her passive. On top of that, Yelan has quite a few fast damaging options. Here I used a Breakthrough Barb into Elemental Skill into Breakthrough Barb, all while weaving in a single normal attack between each to activate as many exquisite throws as possible. With this snazzy combo, Yelan was able to wash away the Xingqius with a blistering 4.1 second clear time. Sacrificial Xingqiu was remarkably close to Jade Cutter Xingqiu somehow, and this is because a very large portion of Xingqiu's front-loaded damage output comes from his elemental skill, and being able to cast two of them in a row is invaluable for such a short fight like this one. Sacrificial Xingqiu is able to drown our poor Regis-Fine friend in a rather competitive 5.5 seconds. As for Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu, he wasn't able to maintain his first place placement like in the previous showcase, and in fact he barely eked out a victory over Sacrificial Sword Xingqiu. He ended up with a 5.3 second clear time, notably slower than a Constellation C0 Slingshot Yelan's clear time, and just a tiny bit faster than Sacrificial Xingqiu. Our next volunteer is the dastardly handsome Masanori. I'm certain that whatever is under that mask is nothing short of a heartthrob. Holy guacamole, Yelan absolutely crushed this fight. What the heck even happened? First, delaying Yelan's burst allows her to bypass the reduced damage that Masanori takes during his getting ready for battle animation. Then the usual LMB-E, LMB, BTB, LMB combo was able to knock out the first life bar just in time during his first attack animation. Masanori is an animation locked enemy where he won't go into the next phase mid-attack animation. Then his second form was literally Deja Vu with pretty much the exact same combo and a lucky Breakthrough Barb state activation. Yelan completed this in an absolutely stellar 17.1 seconds. As for Sacrificial Xingqiu, well, he desperately needed that extra damage during Masanori's getting ready for battle animation, even though Masanori takes reduced damage here. I also needed to fish for a quadruple crit on his elemental skills, which was run resetting. Sacrificial Xingqiu's much lower sword prickle damage numbers were felt quite strongly here, as Masanori was able to do a jump back before going into his second phase. Then Sacrificial Xingqiu managed to effortlessly get his second burst, but still needed to wait for his elemental skill to come off cooldown in order to finish off Masanori in 29.7 seconds. Next is Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu, who actually didn't need to wait through Masanori's battle ready animation to do enough damage to knock him out within Masanori's first attack. Then, Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu's elemental burst damage wasn't enough to finish off the second phase of Masanori before his elemental skill came back, but once his elemental skill was back, he was able to finish off Masanori in 23.2 seconds, putting him solidly in second place. Next we have a continuous single target boss fight, our local friendly sleepy lizard, the Primo Geovishap. Constellation Zero's Slingshot Yelan yet again absolutely crushed this fight. By precasting her burst during the Primo Geovishap's waking up phase, this allows her to have a large damage boost at the beginning of the fight from her passive. Now, I'm not sure why I didn't do her second breakthrough barb during the first burst, but oh well. Anyway, thanks to all the battering from herself and Mona, she's able to get her burst a second time, and despite failing to get the third breakthrough barb, this fight was clearly completely effortless, and Yelan was able to take out our Geovishap friend in a blistering 18.9 seconds. I think we're starting to see a pattern here with these characters' solo damage performances. A 90% damage potential Sacrificial Sword Xingqiu was unsurprisingly the slowest yet again. Unfortunately for Xingqiu, unlike Yelan, Xingqiu gains very little from being on field all the time. What's remarkable about this run though, is that all 8 hits from his elemental skill managed to crit. This is a measly 10.4% chance of occurring. That little tidbit aside, Sacrificial Xingqiu still needed quite a lot of time after his 4 elemental skills to finally finish off the Primo Geovishap in an agonizingly long 33.7 seconds. We have another situation where a Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu was slower than a Constellation 0 Slingshot Yelan. But again, I do want to emphasize that Xingqiu gains very little from being on field, and obviously I was using him on field for this. However, what was really nice about this run is that the Primordial Geovishap's Celestial Shower, or Primordial Shower, I always forget what it's called, lined up perfectly with Jade Cutter Xingqiu's second elemental skills cooldown, and he was able to complete this in a very expensive 23.4 seconds. Our last overworld showcase that demonstrates a bit of interesting variance is the Muppet Pastor, the Kagumenki. Yet again, Yelan was the fastest, but by a smaller margin than the last two. I did the same thing against the Primogea Bishop by precasting her elemental burst, which turns the Kagumenki's initial invulnerability into an advantage for her. This allows her to quickly burst down the first phase of the Kagumenki and get her burst back up just in time for the second phase. Now, I wanted to look cool and chase the Kagumenki when it blinked back with her elemental skill, but interestingly this was still my fastest run and I didn't do that. Yelan beat down our poor puppet friend in 24.1 seconds. Sacrificial Xingqiu is unsurprisingly yet again the slowest for his on-field damage performance. Fortunately though, he is also the easiest to use as no energy funneling was needed for him at all thanks to the double elemental particles and the ER from the Sacrificial Sword, and finally his Constellation 6. Something really cool to note is that somehow Xingqiu's swords managed to track the Magukenki even after it blinked back. Anyway, after 4 elemental skills, 3 elemental bursts, Sacrificial Xingqiu finally managed to rearrange our puppet friend's face in 34.5 seconds. So this Refinement 5 Jade Cutter was remarkably close to Constellation 0 Slingshot Yelan's performance, and this is for one main reason. That reason being the Magukenki's mid-fight invincibility duration. This buys Jade Cutter Xingqiu the time needed to catch up, as his elemental skill was able to come off cooldown just in time. Anyway, there's honestly nothing else particularly notable, and Jade Cutter Xingqiu completed this in a very competitive 25.6 seconds. And now with all the overworld solo damage performances out of the way, we can finally get into the very important team damage showcase. I decided to use these same teammates for all 3 of our contestants, Zhongli, Bennett, and Xiangling. For both Jade Cutter Xingqiu and Yelan, I've switched their builds over to more energy-focused builds, since they don't have any Hydro teammates to battery them, and since I'm doing a continuous Abyss 12 run, they need to have their bursts up, so an energy recharge build is far more necessary than for the overworld. Well, Yelan and Sacrificial Xingqiu's times were remarkably close for 12-on-1, less than a 0.65% of a difference. I opened up this fight with a double vape from Yelan's burst and breakthrough barb to one-shot the first wave of Whopper flowers. Then for the second wave, I timed Yelan's elemental skill to group them up once Zhongli's meteor was available. Watching this again, I think I could have saved 2 to 3 seconds on Zhongli's meteor availability by properly funneling energy to him, but oh well. For the double Vishaps, I had to wait for Zhongli's meteor burst to come off cooldown before starting the rest of the team's rotation. Although looking back on this, I think opening with Yelan's burst before Xiangling's is the way to go, to vape all of Xiangling's initial burst. Yelan and Xiangling regularly exchanged vapes, and it all worked out with her team completing this in 46.4 seconds. It's worth mentioning that I did Yelan's runs before the other 2, hence why some obvious improvements could have been made. Sacrificial Xingqiu's performance was, again, very close to Yelan's here. Why? Well, the strategies were nearly identical. Use Zhongli's meteor to group the first wave and then Xingqiu's elemental skill to finish them off. Then use Zhongli's meteor a second time and have Xingqiu finish off the second wave. Then rely on a third Zhongli meteor for the double Vishaps and use Xiangling's Pyronado to finish them off. Because the teams and roles of Xingqiu and Yelan are so similar in this situation, the time to clear this is largely based on the teammates' cooldowns and rotations. In the end, Sacrificial Xingqiu ended up with a 46.1 second clear time. Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu actually managed to trim some time off here. This is due to the optimized second Zhongli meteor timing, saving 3 entire seconds. There's another big advantage that Xingqiu actually has over Yelan in this full team scenario, and that is Bennett compatibility. Being on field in Bennett's burst actually pushes Xingqiu's damage to be equal to or even higher than Yelan's. Anyway, the improved execution of the strategy, since Jade Xingqiu was the last character I did these runs for, gave Jade Cutter Xingqiu the victory here with a 38.6 second clear time. And finally, a very large and impressive 200,000 damage Vape E nuke against the double Geo Vishaps. Now let's see how they all perform in 12-2-1. Well, the times were all close enough in my opinion. This is pragmatically speaking a three-way tie, with Yelan just being a tiny bit faster. Sadly, Yelan's team had the worst energy starting the run, but despite that, she still managed to eke out a small lead here. Why? Honestly, I'm not too sure, but it could be because of the earlier Xiangling burst. Anyway, they all used almost the exact same strategy, and since Yelan and both the Xingqius are all completely capable of performing basically the same role, the three teams ended up with very similar performances and time. Really, I see little purpose in showing all three runs right now, so I'll show the remaining two in the background later when I summarize the results. Lastly, we have 12-3-1, literally just two baby primordial Vishaps. Unsurprisingly, we have another performance where all three teams were very close. It was rather challenging grouping them up properly, so I decided to use this opener where Bennett and Zhongli pushed one of them to the other. I found this to be significantly faster than waiting an eternity for them to both charge at you. Anyway, this is just Yelan, Xingqiu, and Xiangling doing Yelan, Xingqiu, and Xiangling things, as all of them were able to complete this between 20 and 22 seconds. So there we go, another DPS showdown featuring a Constellation Zero free-to-play accessible 5-star character. What's particularly interesting about this DPS showdown is that Yelan absolutely dominated in terms of her solo personal damage output. However, in a full team scenario that involved having Bennett on the team, the clear times were effectively much closer. Bennett is a great equalizer, and honestly why Yelan's personal damage, being much higher than Xingqiu's, is completely fine and balanced. This is because Bennett provides a substantial boost to Xingqiu's Vape elemental skill damage and whenever Xingqiu is actually on field, while providing Yelan with nothing at all. Anyway, I was personally quite surprised by Yelan absolutely dominating even a Refinement 5 Jade Cutter Xingqiu when it came to the overworld stuff. And this is all even with the 3-star bow, the Slingshot. Imagine if she got her hands on her signature weapon, the Aqua Simulacra. Anyway, all three of them are clearly extremely capable on a Xiangling team as well, as demonstrated by the Abyss 12 runs. Up next, we're going to do a DPS showdown between Constellation 6 Yelan and one or two other contestants. Personally, I'm not too sure who to put her up against, but frankly, anyone seems like a reasonable competitor. Let me know who you'd like to see Constellation 6 Yelan face up against. And guys, I'm so close to 300k subscribers, so do me a favor and smash that subscribe button so we can finally put that milestone to rest. And also, don't forget to check out today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. They have made so many of these videos possible thanks to their generosity and sponsoring so many of my videos. Just give that link down below a smash to show that you appreciate my videos as well as their sponsorships. Also, I regularly make Genshin Impact videos ranging from C0 showcases, DPS showdowns, guide videos, and more. So be sure to smash the subscribe button as it's the best and easiest way for you to support my work. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.